frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me.
I'm about to go Goku. Leave on my head is red like old news. Yeah, trying to get the green like it's Whole Foods. Couldn't take my style and now you so blue. Yeah, now we don't need know you. Your hometown we don't need go to. Trying to get it worldwide global. Looking I can show you. Been killing this is go-to. Spiller, the whole man killer. Life so free, can't no man kill 'em. Came from the bottom, was a broke man, get up. Still move like 10 man with no found with them. Boom, pardon me, I get hectic. Boom, I survive through the wreckage. Should go look for the exit. New sheriff in town, I get a little reckless. Missed the memo, go check the message. I ain't then came back for seconds. I hate seeing your fake little necklace. Lifestyle decrepit, I should probably expect this. Too much game for your league. I'm Hussein with Steve, on Hussein on beats. Legendary, I'm everything you aim to be. I'm insane and free, you can't tame the beast.
Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Frenemy, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show me that freedom! Well, freedom!
I give you yes, it's right.
Freedom!
Start right now.
Freedom!
Get your freedom tonight.
Freedom! Well, freedom! Come on, everybody. Young, old, all you lovers. This is our time to rise back from the sand and claim our freedom. Talking about the freedom. Let yourself be free.
I give you yes, it's right.
Freedom.
Start right
Talking
now.
about the freedom.
Get your freedom tonight.
Freedom.
I give you yes, it's right.
Freedom. Let yourself be free.
Start right now.
Freedom.
Get your freedom tonight.
Freedom. Well, freedom.
it going, everybody? Welcome aboard. This is our favorite show of the week, also known as Thirsty Thursday. So today we're going to be having an extra special episode. We have our friend Zalon Stripes on, and I always forget to do this, so I thought, you know what, today, let's go ahead and do it. Just to remind everybody, the panel that we put together for Thirsty Thursday is not your average panel, right? It's important to me to give voices to leaders and pioneers and even dinosaurs of our industry, and I say that lovingly, right? Because there is so much knowledge from the different facets here that they could bring to the table. And you know, I even think about myself as a lawn care guy. There's so many other lawn care guys I could put in here to replace myself. You know, Ray is unique in the sense that for decades now, multiple decades, he's been managing not just lawn care, but extremely what we would refer to as fine turf in Hawaii, and he manages it unlike any other. It's golf course, legitimate golf course style lawn care, in an applied in a business, and that is just. He's literally the only one in America that I know that does that, and so that is why we have him on the panel, and Mr. DeMay, who's not quite here yet. But Pat Kelly, I saw your comment out of the corner of my eye that made me laugh. And Ryan DeMay, obviously, for decades has been in sports turf management. And I don't want to make this to sound like I bring anything special to the table as far as lawn care is concerned, because there's so many other lawn care guys out there who are awesome. You know, I think about my buddy in Mount Juliet, Josh Whitaker. I think about my buddy in Atlanta, Georgia, Russell Skipper. My buddy in Ohio, David Turfnerd Watkins. You know, that could easily just take my place in this whole thing. But I say that for any of the new people that are tuning in for the first time. That is why I have brought the panel together in such the way that I have. And big shout out, of course, to Jay Pink for being our producer. I have to say that the quality of the content that comes out of this place has increased exponentially since he has begun helping me. So always much love to you, Jay Pink, and thank you for all the added effort. And
thank you for the kind words. I'll drop off the bottle of whiskey as payment tomorrow.
So for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, like I said, we have special guests up there on the top right, and that is going to be the Lawn Stripes himself. We can all go check him out over at you can hop on over to the YouTube and type in the Lawn Stripes, or in the video description down below, you'll see a link to his channel. Be sure to go over there, hit subscribe, and watch what kind of gasoline he likes to throw on fires over on his channel, because that's some inside baseball right there, isn't it, Daniel? So to get things started off, while we're waiting on Ryan here, I thought we would get a little bit of history from you. And so, Dan the man, if you could give us some information here. So let's start out with your location. What is your grass type? How long have you been doing the lawn care thing? And tell us a little bit about your social media experience as well.
So I am in Cincinnati. The grass type is mostly tall fescue. There might be a little bit of other crap in the front yard from God knows how long ago that's been sprinkled in there from contractors, whatnot. So I originally got the lawn bug, I'd say probably when I was a wee little Hulkamaniac, watching the family mow the grass, and I wanted to play, and it's like, oh, we get on the mower and run around with them. Thought it was fun. Got a little bit older, 16, 17. Still, starting to mow the yard for the dad. He was working long hours, so I was going out mowing with the Dixon zero turn. See how many of you know that one. And so I unfortunately was never really taught true lawn care from my family. They were mow it down low so you don't have to mow it as often, and they would mow what I would refer to as NASCAR style, all left turns. So they would just run around in a bunch of circles, and by the time it's done, the yard looked like a snail shell pattern. So when I was out there mowing and doing all this, I finally one day I just happened to see some lawn guys actually mowing, and they were actually mowing straight lines, and it's like an epiphany. Oh, why the hell don't I do that? So then I started, going through my yard and mowing, a little bit of stripes and starting to play with the hide cut a little bit, and I started going from there. So I kind of gave me the bug, and then once I finally got the lawn that I'm in now, um, I started working with that. It was pretty bad starting out, very bare, a lot of weeds, and so unfortunately I had to hire a certain national lawn care company to help me out until I actually knew what I was doing. Um, so then I kind of took over, tried doing some things, still failed. So then I actually started doing a little bit more research and found a few different YouTube guys, and so learned from them. And then I took another stab at it, and the lawn's been, I'll say, it's been looking pretty good since then.
That's interesting. I always find it fascinating to hear about where that kind of flavor come from. You talk about how growing up it was, NASCAR style lawn care. What clicked with you? Like, was there a defining moment where you were just like, damn it, no matter what it takes, I'm going to have a badass yard? Or was it just kind of a gradual thing? Like, I failed and therefore I must conquer.
I think it was still that part where I had that epiphany, where I saw these lawn care guys going through and laying these just badass lawn stripes. It's like I've got to do that. I want my house that I live at. No, it wasn't my yard. It was my dad's house. I had to do it. And so then from there, it's like, okay, now what about some of these weeds? So I'm out there, in 25,000 square foot lawn with a little, weed and feed, with this little handheld thing trying to kill some weeds in the yard, which, got me nowhere. But, it was that mentality that I wanted to, make things look decent and get this hands on. And, it just kind of grew from there.
Okay. So, let's do this. J Pink, can we take a look at any of the data he has presented to us that we can kind of
Yeah.
fart around with here?
Do you want to start with last year, or do you want to see this year?
Let's start with last year, and then we'll work our way up into what happened most recently.
All right, so this should be for the front yard last year, 2020.
Okay. Wow, this has been a great show. Super easy. Thanks for coming on, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one we actually kind of looked at, and so the plan was for this one was ammonium sulfate, potassium nitrate, there's some elemental sulfur down, and citric acid at I think 1 pound per 1,000. And so that was pretty much my plan for the whole year. Toward the fall time, I did hit a couple bags of Stress X, threw that down, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at 100 parts per million, I'm not really worried about too much. I'm talking about on your K here. Your soil pH is 7.2. I'm guessing you put a little bit of effort into dropping that as well, aside from just ammonium sulfate. Was that up to that point or after that point that we're looking at on the soil test right here?
That was so after we hit that, that's when Ray gave me the ideas of doing the elemental sulfur and the citric acid. So after this point of the soil test, then it was off to the races with all that stuff, throwing it down.
Okay. It's pretty interesting. All right, let's move on to what we're looking at currently.
All right, so here's the front this year. So in
All
case you
right.
missed it,
Yeah.
not a huge change. This is currently.
Wait,
Yep,
do
so-
the
John.
before and after again.
Okay, so here is 2020,
Okay.
and here is 2021.
Okay. There's a lot of positive movement on this, right? And Ray, what kind of sticks out to you in terms of movement that is working towards the side of good right now?
Well, I consider a pH drop of 0.2 to be rather significant given how short Daniel's growing season actually is. That is a big movement. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
That's a pretty big move. Pretty big movement. He's able to keep his potassium at about that 100 parts per million, and to me that is big too, because what you typically see happening is people's potassium keeps on going lower and lower because what they're typically doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, they're hammering the nitrogen, but they're not adding or supplying phosphorus yet. Daniel came to me and he asked me for basically a green dock style mix that contained equal parts of potassium and nitrogen. And I think that's been working out for him very well, actually.
I love seeing the sulfate number come up there too. And I'm sorry, J Pink, can you do a before and after again?
Yeah. 2020,
Yep.
2021.
So, and I'll tell you what correlates interestingly there for me is that as his sulfur level increased, his iron level decreased, right? And as we all know, sulfur has that weird interaction with iron, right? And I think you've got multiple facets here that are working in tandem to help facilitate the utilization of that iron you've got in your soil. Number one, you reduce soil pH. Therefore, iron availability is going to increase. And especially if you're making applications of citric acid or elemental sulfur, you are freeing up that iron to be taken up and utilized by the plant. Again, you're also raising sulfur levels. And remember, everybody at home, I got an email about this the other day that somebody told me, why would I ever use citric acid when all I need to do is apply more sulfated fertilizers to lower soil pH? Sulfate, SO4, is pH neutral. It does not move the needle. So when we're looking at sulfur, when we are looking at sulfur on a soil test, it is not elemental sulfur. We are looking at sulfate, typically, is what that is measuring. Sulfate is not moving the needle on your pH. Ammonium nitrogen does. Citric acid does. Elemental sulfur does. Sulfate does not move the needle. So you can apply all the potassium sulfate in the world, and it ain't going to do a damn thing for you. All right, now that that's out of the way, there is an interaction between sulfur and iron and manganese, specifically sulfate and iron and manganese. So interesting how all of those in tandem kind of work together. Let me ask, Daniel, did you feel the need to apply more or less iron over the last year?
I actually applied less. I can probably count on one hand how many times I actually sprayed any ferrous ammonium sulfate. Maybe one, maybe two times. And that was just try to get a little bit of a darker green pop out of the front yard compared to the backyard.
Sure. Did you feel like you had better color over the course of the year than you did the previous year?
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody just asked about a 2100 with 14% sulfur. I don't know what that is. Most 2100s I know are. What is that?
That is the actual full analysis for ammonium sulfate.
I thought it had
Something
a higher
like that.
sulfur percentage. I thought it was a 210020 is what I thought.
20? I could be wrong about that too, but it would be weird for somebody to put together urea with a lot of sulfur. I mean, the numbers just don't line up for somebody doing that at all.
No, it doesn't. You know, that's definitely not a urea. I think it may be a typo, Ray, because it's a 210024 sulfur. Yes, Nicholas,
24.
when you hear us say ammonium sulfate, that's what we're talking about, is a 2100 with 24% sulfur. And again, the caveat there is that ammonium sulfate is not acidifying because of the sulfur in the bag. Ammonium sulfate is acidifying because of the ammonium. As ammonium goes through its whole conversion process over to nitrate and all that crap, we're releasing what, 4 hydrogen ions into the soil? Is that right?
Actually, you're throwing in 4 hydrogen ions, H pluses, into the soil for every ammonium ion that you add. So you're actually getting a very strong acidifying effect that can and will add up if you're dealing with a soil that's already acid, for example.
Yeah, and to also make that clear is that ammonium sulfate alone probably isn't enough to move. If you have a legitimate high pH soil, ammonium sulfate alone is not going to be the difference between you having a pH of 7.8 and a pH of 7.0. That's not what that means. If you go out and you use it for a season, you're not going to lower it that much. However, as a tool in the toolbox, as part of a comprehensive plan where you are addressing the soil pH on a multifaceted approach, where you've got elemental sulfur coming out, you've got citric acid coming out, and you've got ammonium sulfate coming out. Now, all of a sudden, you can actually make some real movement. John Cruz asked, does ammonium nitrate acidify to an extent? And Ray, I'll let you answer this. This is kind of an interesting one.
It does. And the thing is that, again, I don't count on it as the absolute be-all, do-all, end-all answer to soils that do need acidification. It is beneficial, but it's still not your answer. For example, I can't tell somebody just use ammonium sulfate or ammonium nitrate as your nitrogen source and you can forget about your soil pH over 7.2. That it doesn't work that way. So
yeah,
I hope
it's
that kind of
nowhere
answered.
near as acidifying as ammonium sulfate is. And there's a chart online. What about anhydrous ammonia, Ray?
Wow. Anhydrous is another one where, think about it, you are applying pure NH3, and farmers that apply a lot of anhydrous will frequently have to lime a lot because they're, by the way, do folks understand what anhydrous actually is as a fertilizer analysis?
No.
Okay, anhydrous is 8200.
Come again?
8200.
Yes.
Okay, so
White lightning, as they call such high concentrated adult beverages up here in my area.
And you put that down at 10 pounds per thousand, right?
Yep. Throw down. I mean,
Only if you're a Bermuda dominator.
exactly. Throw down. I mean, I invite somebody to pump in 5 pounds of anhydrous per 1,000 square foot, and, for example, shank that into their Bermuda turf. Get back to me a week after they've done it. I'd like to hear of the results.
A little toasty.
Yeah.
So we also have back from last year and back from this year, if we want to.
Yeah,
compare.
let's take a look at those two.
All right, so here's back from 2020.
Yeah.
And here is the backyard this year. Okay, so now last year, 2020. This year, 2021.
Interesting. Ray, I'm not super in tune with minute rates of boron. So having 3.5 parts per million and that being considered very high, I know there are some issues with plant performance with molybdenum. Are there any issues with boron in excess concentrations in the soil?
Sure are. Once you get, I want to say, above 5 parts per million, that starts to become very toxic to most broad-leaved plants. You're actually very fortunate in that boron is rather well tolerated by most grasses. Your toxic level for boron is way above that 5 part per million mark. In other words, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but I've seen it on the internet too, where supposedly somebody can apply, I think, 1 to 2 ounces of sodium borate, which is also known as borax, as your weed control for something called creeping Charlie. 1 to 2 ounces per 1,000 square foot. You spray it on once, you let it water in, and then supposedly, because that's toxic to especially shallow-rooted broadleaf plants, the creeping Charlie takes that up and then it gives up. But I then have to think now, how are your trees that have roots extending into the lawn going to receive that high rate of boron? So I actually don't recommend anybody do that, even if they do have a creeping Charlie problem. I tell them to stick with something that's a little more predictable.
Yeah, sodium borate. I've I've seen it used on what was it? I believe it was a over-the-counter solution for cicada killers. I think is what people were spraying like a powder into the holes, and it did indeed smoke the turf where all of that sodium borate was placed. And I don't even know if borax actually kills cicada killers at all, but that was what was recommended to them, and they used it. And boy, did it absolutely roast the grass.
For everyone asking, Ryan is trying to fix his camera. He's having some tech issues. We'll do.
He'll get it. He'll get
There
it.
we
Then he can come on and give us a little rundown.
All right, Matt, you want to see?
Yeah, I might have a
Got-
question before we go over to the my soil comparison. So on the front yard, and this one kind of threw me in for a loop because I haven't been using any other granulars. The magnesium front yard last year compared to this year's actually went up. And being that I haven't applied any sort of fertilizers that had magnesium in it, trying to think why those numbers would go up, other than maybe there might be limestone or something in the soil somewhere that would be naturally releasing the high rates of magnesium, and maybe the calcium.
Possible. Could be in your water as well. That would be my guess, is that you have calcium and magnesium in your water.
Yep.
So
that is actually, Daniel, how hard is your water coming out of your taps?
I say ow when I take a shower. I don't know. I don't really know how hard it is. I mean, I haven't done
Okay.
any like type of water test, but I would imagine there's a little bit of sediment in it. Yeah.
Actually, when I say hard water, I'm actually talking about dissolved calcium and or magnesium in the water, because the way you can tell, for example, is, do you have a problem if tap water ever dries on glass or paint?
Yes. Yep. When we don't
Okay.
use a rinse aid, there is some little bit of water spotting and stuff, and we have actually killed a couple water heaters. There's been sediment in the bottom of the water heater.
Okay. Then what that means is that your tap water is contributing a significant amount of calcium and magnesium to your soil. So you are always going to be monitoring and watching your soil pH. And when that's your situation, you are looking at thinking about citric acid as long as you want your pH to remain under 7.5. That's just life.
Yeah, I kind of figured I was going to be applying it for quite a while anyway to get it where I want it. But yeah, it makes sense if I'm watering and there's calcium in it. Yeah, I've got to compensate.
Yeah, I mean, that's just because I know I've told other people that the real fix for their soil issues is to start watering from some kind of a rig that injects small amounts of acids and always keeps your water pH at, say, 6.5. It's
Are you
done on
on-
like
you-
the
Are you on
golf
municipal
course
water?
system.
Yeah, I saw the question. Yeah, I kind of wish I had a well, but yeah, it's city water.
You wouldn't want a well in your area, trust me. It'd be even
Yeah,
worse.
yeah. I kind of spoke too soon on that. Yeah, so I said, I'm like, then again.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, Ohio in general, different areas that you go and the different aquifers that we drill into and pump out of all have a variety of issues with high bicarbonates, high calcium, high magnesium, and your area in
Arsenic.
particular. Yeah, arsenic, nitrates, lead, all those good things. I mean, just don't make them well water like they used to. That was the best part about drinking that stuff at like the park or something like that, where they had that little, you could pump it right out of the ground and drink that like sulfur, really iron tasting water. That was good. But anyhow,
Oh my goodness.
that's probably why my brain is fried right now. Probably.
Have you been drinking hose water again?
I would drink hose water like today. I have no problem with that. I think.
Listen, I never had an issue with it either, but I will tell you, there was one time I drank from a hose, and this was back in my True Green days. I think I was at True Green, and man, dude, my stomach was wrecked for all of 6 months. Like, there was nothing positive happening with my digestive system for a solid 6 months. I was
Do
convinced
you know where that? Yeah.
I had a worm.
Well, I mean, where was that hose before you put it in your mouth?
In the mulch.
Oh, all right. Well,
That would do
know.
it. That would do it. You see,
there wasn't any beneficial bacterias that could florate and produce photosynthesis and this and that and put a warm front into your side that makes your nitrogen bloom. That didn't happen.
I don't know. I grew a watermelon in my stomach. Does that count?
That hose got you pregnant with diarrhea.
Yeah, it got me with something, man. I'm telling you, dude. See, it was a solid 6 months. But then it went back to normal, and boy, I was good. All right, so all kind of interesting stuff. Taking a look here, but let's move on to. You said you have a my soil test as well.
Yep, I did a comparison. Yeah, there you go. My soil this year to front yard this year.
Okay.
We
All
can see
right.
if we can make it a little bigger here.
Let's do a little
pill
rundown
for
of
that.
what we see.
There is a pill for that. This won't last longer than 4 hours, though, so don't worry.
Does I'm going to high five someone.
All right. So a 1/4 point difference in your pH. Let's see. So, you said this is both from this year, right?
Both this year, exact same soil samples. I threw it all into one bucket. I even recorded it, so YouTube video will come out. So people will, oh, you're messing with the test. No,
a-
it's coming out of the same bucket. Here's me putting it into the bag. Here's me putting it into a little cup of water that looks like it would be a urine sample. And here's both of them going into the mailbox.
So somebody emailed me the other day and told me verbatim that if I did not understand the my soil test, then I should not talk about the my soil test. And one thing I would like to address about that is let me explain a little bit how this test works, right? So what you do is you take your test, you put it into a jar with deionized water, and there's a capsule in there, and that capsule contains a resin. And that resin is referred to as an ion exchange resin. So it is a blend of multiple resins that adsorb, and not absorb, but adsorb cations and anions. So our cations, such as K, Mag, Cal, or our anions, such as N, P, and what is it? Boron or molybdenum? What is it? It's boron, isn't it?
Boron, yes, boron.
Okay, I got that out. So what you do is you package this container, right? And basically whatever dissolves in the water, that resin being able to adsorb ions, it captures whatever dissolved in the water from your soil. So it would be similar if you did a water extraction test with your soil, right? The difference is that there's a certain amount of residence time that occurs where it sits with this capsule in the DI water in your soil. Whereas typically with a water extraction, that's going to be done kind of in real time. So from that point, when you receive the resin, you will use hydrochloric acid to strip the resin of the ions that have been absorbed. And then from there, you take your measurements of what absorbed into that resin and quantify that into a chart such as you see here. And that's how you derive these answers. Then from how they take what they measure in terms of ions in the soil and turn that into actionable data is secret, right? That is proprietary technology, and I fully understand that people need to have proprietary technology, and that's good and that's fine. The problem is, as we see here, the interpretations, not only are the measurements of what actually gets pulled into the resin off relatively significantly, the recommendations and even their interpretation of what gets absorbed and their quantification of what was absorbed is also not really comparable to anything else we have in the industry to be able to go to and say, yes, here we go. This makes sense. So for instance, we're seeing, like we'll look at boron, for example. In this particular test, we are low in boron. But as we can see, we are not low in boron. Or in copper, we have 1.5 parts per million, which would be considered adequate. You're not below any kind of minimum level of sustainable nutrition. However, here we fall into the low category where it would be necessary. We are outside of optimal range, and therefore we must make an application. Same with zinc. If we compare those two, we are clearly in an adequate range on a Malic 3 test. However, we are not here. Now, what's interesting is that manganese on a Malic 3 test, the total of 57 parts per million, manganese is found oddly in check, right? So in this particular instance, it's going to tell you that manganese is good, but you can see you have adequate room to continue to play with manganese according to your Malic 3 test, right? And so if you're asking yourself which one is good versus the other and which one should you pay attention to or not pay attention to, really, here's the thing, is that there is decades of research science behind the various testing methods, including Malic 3 or Malic 1 or Olsen or Bray or ammonium acetate or whatever the case may be. And so you could take this and say, okay, this is a screenshot in time of what the root sees. Yes, but it's still not a total picture because the root has the ability to find things in the soil as long as there is nitrogen present that otherwise it wouldn't necessarily be able to not find if there was no adequate nitrogen present, right? And that starts diving into the details of root exudates. So, all of that to say is that I have a very good understanding of exactly how this test functions. But the reason why I cannot recommend this is because in this instance, it states that we are depleted in most of our metals that need to be applied. However, as we can see, we are nowhere near what would be considered deficient levels out of those. In true form or fashion, the only way to the easy way to all of a sudden make those things more readily available would be to, one, continue to work on acidifying the soil, or two, continue to apply nitrogen and allow root exudates to do their work. So that way you're not stuck into a situation where you have to run 5, 6, 7, 8 tests a year to see what's in solution, and therefore make your application by application, soil test by soil test in order to be able to have data that's quantifiable or actionable. And also the pH thing, right? And here we can see we're not too terribly off on pH. You know, we're 0.25, but we've seen it as high as a full point off of the pH. And so that can be a problem as well. So anyway, I just wanted to make clear, I promise, I know how the thing works, but I can't say that there's anything specific about this that is giving me really the type of data I would need to be able to design and execute a turf management program on it.
Well,
Ryan,
I'll throw something in. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Go ahead.
No, Daniel,
I was
you're
just going to
up.
throw out
Go.
there. So from just a Joe Schmo DIY standpoint, comparing these two soil tests as well, just looking at it from a cost perspective. So when you buy one of these My Soil tests, okay, you get this pretty little package or whatever and shipped to your door, and it has prepaid envelope and all that. It was $34 shipped to my house. The Waypoint, I sent 2 soil samples in one box, sent it off to them, and that was $33. You know, I'll let that one kind of sink in. You know, cost perspective, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to go through, and not just Waypoint. I threw it out there. I'm not affiliated with anyone. I don't get any affiliate links or anything with that crap. You know, Waypoint's good people, Spectrum, Extension Office, whomever. You know, no BMS here. So, you know, send it off to any of them, and you're going to get, you know, an industry standard, you know, soil test back, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and so Matt, I don't know if you know what you're talking about. I'm very disappointed. But like I read that book on 101 Ways to Make Money on YouTube. I was reading a book this week on positivity, you know, and I hope that maybe later that Daniel will pull that guitar out and we can all sing Kumbaya around the fire while nobody's wearing PPE. Now, getting back to our subject at hand, everything you said is correct as I understand it, right? As I understand it. The first point I'll make is that anybody is welcome to come on the show and discuss, not to push, not to promote, not to do anything like that, because we have no commercial interest other than good agronomy. If you want to explain yourself, if you want to, you know, just talk turf, I don't think there's anybody here that's going to be threatening, rude, crass, or anything otherwise, just to talk turf, right? So the things that have come out recently that have concerned me is that first it was, you know, it was pushed as, hey, just do this and you take one test and you're good. And now the trickle truth, you know, the drip, drip, drip starts of, well, you know, it's only a test. It's only a snapshot in time. It's only a 1-app test, which is accurate because, you know, ion resin and the way it works, as you described, very similar to a test that we've had around for a long, long time, known as a saturated paste extract, where we take DI water and we react it with the soil there, right? And there's a approved testing method to do this, right? And we can get quantifiable data out of it. Now, I'm not saying either one of these is right or wrong. I'm just saying that, again, from a cost perspective, you look at that, you know, there's a variety of labs that will do that for anywhere from $30 to $50. But the point that I'd like to make is that this is all about temporal space, right? So we're talking about time. So some of the soil tests or some of the testing that we've talked about here over these last few episodes has been, you know, your standard soil inventory audit, right, with a Malic 3, with an acid extractant, like a Malic 3, like a Malic 1, a Morgan, one of those, right? And that test is going to give you data that you can probably go on in a sandy or a low CEC soil for probably a year and feel comfortable that, you know, how you move the needle there is going to be pretty predictable. In a higher CE soil or a heavier soil, you might be able to get 2 years out of it if it's not super intensively maintained, right? So I'm paying, like what Daniel said, I'm paying, you know, $33 or whatever for a couple of samples, I think is what he said, to get that data that could last you 2 years. You know, you can certainly sample before that, but that long. Now with the saturated paste and with what's come out about my soil is that a saturated paste extract test is really good for, you know, maybe 4 to 8 weeks, something like that. You know, so it really is the way that it's intended to be used is every app. We're taking that sample, we're doing a saturated paste extract, and then we're going to make a judgment, a decision of what we're going to apply next based on those numbers, right? And they're going to fluctuate a lot because you can even divide up a sample. I think there's a paper on this from Dr. Caro, Larry Stoll out at Pace Turf that they did probably, gosh, it's been probably 20 years ago, maybe even 18 years ago, talking about saturated paste extracts and how they worked and what they can be used for and what they shouldn't be used for. And what was discussed there mainly was just that it's a good indicator for like electrical conductivity and some of the salt issues that are present, you know, in the Western United States and some other areas of the country. But as far as nutrients go, it's that snapshot in time. And if you're not Johnny on the spot, it's very, very tough to get those apps to line up and be calibrated with the data that you're seeing or correlate with the data. So that's again, it's like, now, okay, you're telling me that I got to do this test really like 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year for the results to continue to be accurate. And not only that, but the recommendations, that's what's the key, the recommendations to be accurate. And the last one, we don't spend too much time on it, but the tissue testing, right? So we're taking clippings off of a putting green, off of a lawn, whatever. They dry those down and tell us how much of dry weight of each nutrient's in there, right? And based on that, we can make some calculated guesses on what nutrients we need to apply to the plant. And there's companies that are doing this commercially right now and offering this as a service, particularly in golf, that you know have a lot of good reviews, a lot of fanfare behind them right now. And again, certainly nothing wrong with it if you want to do it that way. But you're living on the razor's edge, like as Ray talks about sometime, you know, and likes to make fun of golf course superintendents, but it is literally, you know, living on the edge of not too bad, but that's what they live with, and that's how they do it because they want just the right inputs for that next 3 to 7 days, and the next 3 to 7 days, and they're willing to adjust it and play with it. So it's all about how frequently you want that data, how much you're going to move it, and then Matt, to your last point there about the calibration of these tests, right? So in particular, you know, a lot of the knock on testing methods over the years has been the calibration piece. So, you know, BCSR versus SLAN. So, you know, we don't have to get too deep into it, but the recommendations that universities or academics or other labs would put out and say, hey, you need to have 150 parts per million of potassium for your soil and your turf to be healthy. Well, originally, a lot of that data was extrapolated from corn plants and other forage crops, right? There wasn't a whole lot of ground tested data. And only here recently, probably within the last 20 or 25 years especially, has that really come into focus. There was some stuff done definitely in the 70s and 80s that helped that cause, but definitely became a bigger issue as golf proliferated and we needed to find out more about how to become more economical with our fertilizer choices for plant health and other reasons, right? So all that said, you know, to say that you can't talk about it because you don't know about it, I'm not sure what we don't understand. And if there is something that we don't understand that we've misconstrued or don't have right, I would welcome those folks or whomever else can explain it to us better and set us straight to come talk. And again, you know, totally, you know, in a curious fashion. I'm not, no dukes up, no white glove treatment, just right there in the middle of, I'm just interested to learn more. So that's my piece. Ray, do you have anything to say about this?
Ray, I think you're muted.
Oh, he's going off too. It's a great speech. I can
Oh
tell.
yeah, look at him. He's sweating.
He's, yeah, his eyebrows are curling up. Damn
Ray,
it.
you're still not sending in any audio. He's really
Ray
going
got
in
so
on it too.
I know he is so ramped up. Look at him.
Wait,
No,
Nope.
still no audio, Ray.
Nope.
still no
Still
audio.
nothing.
All right.
Continue
so,
working
well,
on that, and when you get it
Okay.
fixed, just start talking
There
over
it
us.
is.
There
There we
it
go. Oh,
is.
here we go.
There it is. There it is.
All right.
Here it is. Okay. Okay.
Start all over
My
again.
thought on this, yeah. Here's my thought on this whole my soil controversy is that, number one, anytime you are talking about a saturated paste type test, which a my soil test is, those tests are performed according to a timed exposure. And what a timed exposure means is that your lab technician takes in your soil sample, then blends it with water, allows a specified contact time, and then he runs the tests. Versus with my soil, you stick that in the mail in that cup with the ion exchange capsule and the deionized water. How long is that soil in contact with the water? How long? Because the reason why I'm asking how long is because when you have soil with especially nettles present, when they're in contact with water, they all go through what's called a reduction oxidation reaction. And that reduction oxidation reaction can then make some metals more available, some metals less available. And in addition to doing that, you then have the matter of your soil pH literally changing over time versus what it actually is. All you got to do is just saturate it with water. And the reason why this is a known issue to soil scientists is because they know this happens in the rice fields, for example, that get, what happens in a rice field, guys?
They go
Gets
through a
wet.
period called flood.
Right. And so if you take a soil sample from the mud during the flood period, Matt, that result is not going to be the same as your soil test taken when the field is dry. It's all the numbers are totally different. So I'm going to ask all of you too. Other than the epic bad weather that I have in Hawaii, do you know of any times when grass is kept under flood conditions for prolonged periods?
Intentionally or unintentionally?
Intentionally.
No, that's not a thing.
It's not a thing, right? I mean, you wouldn't, for example, Ryan, run the irrigation on one of your fields so that it's underwater for like 4 or 5 days. Not
Only
happening.
if Coach says
And-
so.
Okay. Only if a team from the desert is coming to play, right? Then you make it a swamp.
Right. I mean, if he said run the irrigation for 6 hours or do 60 up downs, I'm all in, man. That's it.
Okay. And I know for myself, I never subject soil or a turf area to a condition where it's literally underwater for a prolonged period of time. I just wouldn't do it. I know it happens to me when it rains for a week straight and it won't stop, but then that's not under my control. So that is
No,
my
and there's-
main
Yeah.
point. That's my main point about this whole ion exchange saturated soil paste test where if we wanted the test to even be consistent and uniform, why not have people send in that soil sample dry? They saturate it at the lab for a timed amount, period, like let's say no more than 8 hours of contact time, for example, and then they run the test. Then I could
And-
start to agree.
So it's kind of a theoretical hypothesis here. The theoretical hypothesis, that's redundant, but is that they are relying on the redox oxidation to make available those rather insoluble metals.
Okay, that's really playing devil's advocate, but again,
Why is it showing low
would you
then?
subject?
Exactly.
Yeah, why does it show low? Why does it show low?
Exactly.
And why do some things, go way up? And so, and again, this goes back to my premise of turf grass and ornamentals are not grown in saturated conditions. Only ornamental I know of that lives in saturated conditions is a water lily. Then in that case, I'd say, okay, I'd send in my sample from my water lily tub to my soil and have them run the test on it, and then I would believe the test there because that duplicates the conditions that plant is growing in at all times.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. If I remember from that Caro and Stoll paper way back, and again, it's a long time ago, but I think their thing was that you could take like what Daniel did, right? He took one bucket, right? 2 soil samples, 1 bucket. We've all seen the video, or we're about to, right?
About to.
And the premise there was that you could divide up the stuff that was going to get a saturated paste extract, and because of how those metals solubilized, right, you could get different readings from the same subsample, right, on down the line. So if I took that big bucket and I scooped out 2 cups at a time, I might get different numbers each time, right? And maybe you could from Malic 3 or whatever, but I think those are more stable in terms of what you're pulling out with that acid. So that's my other concern, is just as a professional, right, is looking at that and saying, okay, if I have a Malic 3 phosphorus value, right, that I get back as a data point, I know how to work with that. I know how to adjust that, right? Such as to say that if I do the same thing with the ion exchange resin, am I going to have the same thing? So what are these calibrated to? What are these calibrated on? And I know that they said they did some work. I've seen, some video and some interviews and things like that, in which, one of their company officers, representatives, has said that, we did some, calibration with, I believe they said, soil Malic 3, and looking at, I think they said tissue samples as well. I think they were trying to correlate all 3 of those data points together to figure out what worked and what didn't. But how widely was that tested? How many areas of the country, different turf types, different soils? And I know that some of this was covered, but again, like, that's the trust factor, right? As what you're putting into that, to say that, okay, what you're giving me in terms of the value proposition is that you're giving me data I couldn't get anywhere else. And I just don't know that that's accurate, at least from a professional standpoint, if it's easy for a homeowner to do, and you feel like you want to rip off 2 or 3 of these a year, yeah, is it going to help? Yeah. I mean, it's better than doing nothing, I guess, but it's also like, is it the most accurate thing, and are you getting good, sound recommendations off of it, and what are those based on? And that's the only thing that I struggle with, from a professional standpoint. And so some folks might say that I'm being negative. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be skeptical, and prove it to me, show it to me. And let us see it work. So, when this becomes more widely adopted in professional turf, and when they can push it out and convince, folks like Ray and myself to venture into this market to figure out, okay, how can this work for me as a professional, then I might, be interested in looking at it. But I'm not seeking it out right now. I'm just saying that in general, I know what I trust, and what I trust is just based on sound science that's replicable and known in an open way, right? A very transparent way.
Yeah, and how many of these have we looked at now of comparing two different tests, and we see pretty much the same discrepancies across the board, right? Micronutrients are always typically off. pH is across the board always off, and so again, like here we would be in another situation where we'd be purely over applying micronutrients for no real reason in this particular instance. So, based on the data that we have in front of us that we see, which is in the dozens of soil test range versus I'm sure they calculate thousands of soil tests, and that's fine. But if it's consistently off, if everything we see is consistently off, then how all of a sudden do you integrate that? And if you're going to take that test at every interval, again, coming at it from the lawn care perspective, who has the time or budget to be able to do that? Because budget is always my main concern. And so if the science is already there and in place for a certain piece of technology, are we really discovering anything new? Or are we just putting lipstick on a wheel and calling it a brand new wheel?
Or inventing a problem that's already been solved.
That's a good point too.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, I'm not not trying to be negative. I hope it's not taken that way. But even if it is, then I'm sorry, but it's just being skeptical. And again, I implore those that know what they're talking about, if there is a way to correct us, set us straight, help us understand better, would love to sit down and have that conversation live.
Yep, and you can send us a mail at mail@thegrassfactor.tv, and that will go to the appropriate people to get that set up. I'm talking to you, J Pink.
Fair enough.
Our handler will get that set up.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, so Daniel, I gotta ask this because this is always my favorite thing to ask anybody. What has been your biggest fail maintaining your property?
Oh, well, this was pretty good laugh among some of you guys. So I did a full backyard renovation. I guess going on 3 years now, something like that. And so it involved in tearing down an old play set and getting rid of a deck, putting in a patio. So there was a bunch of dirt, and so I pretty much killed half the lawn from that being renovated. So I decided, what the hell, let's kill the whole yard. Let's make it all consistent and nice, because I'm a little CDO, so I'd rather have the whole yard be dead than half the yard dead, or everything green and some of it different species, whatever. So I decided to just nuke the whole damn thing. So went across, nuked it all, and I needed to do some leveling. I got a hold of a company. Apparently they're more of a excavating company, so I had them give me some topsoil. Yeah, that right there. So I brought a bunch of that soil in, and apparently it was pretty alkaline and didn't go so well. So it turned pretty much into concrete, and I was playing hell with that for quite some time, trying to get that under control. So grass didn't want to grow there, so I just had to keep fighting with it, and sometimes it would get flooded out, and eventually it worked out. But yeah, it was not a happy, probably good year or so. The wife yelled at me, "Why'd you kill the whole lawn?" Yeah.
Never let you live it down, ever.
Nope.
Always judging.
Nope.
Always.
I'll be 80 years old. She'd be like, remember that time you killed the whole backyard?
Back there in
Yes.
2019, I
Yes, I
can't
do.
believe you did that. Yep.
And
I-
those
It
of
was
you
the
that are not
topsoil I
married,
brought
they
in.
they do remember that. You will be 80 years old, and she'll remember that day. I know damn
Yeah.
well she's probably upstairs watching the stream, so I'm probably going to go ahead and sleep on the couch tonight.
That's fine. Hopefully she'll let you take your pillow from the bed downstairs, and you won't have to sleep with the little throw pillows. I just hope for
Right?
you and your sake. Yeah, that's when you know you've really lost. Is
Or
when she
worst
keeps your
case
pillows
scenario, you
multiplied.
do have a nice shed to sleep in.
Ooh, yeah,
That's
like a
true.
little tree house, but it's not in a tree.
I-
You know.
Have you ever burned
I've got
down
the-
your own shed?
No, I'll leave that to you.
Okay, just making sure. Listen. You can throw stones if you want, but that was a friendly question.
That's
Nope,
an
I have
honest
not.
mistake, though, man. That's an honest mistake.
Yeah,
'cause you get
yeah.
you get all those guys
I
that
didn't
are
know
like,
about
"Oh,
the
I got
soil."
topsoil." Yeah, I got this topsoil. It's real good. Now, if you're down where Matt Martin lives, you got some options because they're going to be like, "Y'all want the brown dirt, the black dirt, or the red dirt?" And that's, I mean, you got a few options down there. Now up here,
Right?
it's mostly only the brown dirt that you get.
It's only the brown dirt.
So
Yep. And
yeah,
I did
you
not
get the
know
brown
that
and the
first
browner.
time. Yep, first time ordering topsoil, they came in with the truck, dumped it, and I'm looking at them like, huh, I expected black dirt. I guess not.
Yeah,
So
you got
yeah,
the taupe. You got the taupe.
I got the
dirt. Yeah,
taupe.
and that's just it's nobody's gonna like taupe ever.
Yeah.
Very
You
unappealing.
know, buying topsoil to me is the biggest racket in all of landscape supplies, and it
No,
drives
mulch
me.
is this. Mulches.
Mulches.
Yeah, because you
Why?
pay
Why
here.
mulch
I don't know what it's
over
like down.
topsoil?
Oh, dude, it's a cartel. I mean, I don't know what it's like down there, but here you take it to the mulch processing plant. You take your yard waste there, right? So if you're a landscaper and you've got limbs you cut up or landscape debris or anything like that, you take it there. The landscape debris gets composted, all the wood gets chipped up, turned into mulch. You turn around, come back in 3 months, they've chipped it up, processed it, dyed it, and you buy the stuff that you dumped for $45 a ton and you buy it back for $32 a yard. That's a racket.
Yeah, and that's relatively high price for mulch too. I got to say, compared to what I see in the area. Well, I haven't looked recently. It's been a good 4 or 5 years since I've bought any mulch, but
You should get back in the mulch game, you know?
no,
back on the wagon, dude.
absolutely not. I'm not going to. And well, if I can still get it at the prices I was getting it, hell, I may house it right here in the driveway and sell it by the shovelful.
So take me through this. Like, how did you, because I'm sure this is a situation that everybody faces out there. And I know I've talked to like Ryan Knorr about buying sand and stuff like that before, but like, what was your process? Like, how did you go look for it? What did you find? And how helpful were the folks that you were dealing with?
pretty much I just saw a sign on the side of the road said fill dirt. That there was a there's just an excavation company that was pretty close to me, so I could have gone through a nursery who also had the brown dirt, or I could have gone to this place who apparently also had the brown dirt, or some other place that has a spray painted sign that says fill dirt. That's probably brown dirt. So I could take my pick. So I just kind of called them up and went up there, and they actually asked if I wanted to look back there. So hindsight, maybe I should have looked at it, but I didn't. So they dropped it off, and then actually when I did the shed, I actually needed to get a little bit more filled dirt. So I figured, aha, I know those other guys sold me the brown dirt, so I'm going to go to the other place. So I went to the other place, brought my truck up there. They came out there with a bulldozer, and I told them I wanted the yard of dirt, and they're like, "Are you sure that's 2,000
God.
pounds of dirt?" I'm like, "Oh shit, maybe give me just half a yard, because I
Give me a
don't want to
shake.
kill my
Just get a
truck."
shake.
Yeah. So they came out there, and those that have seen my truck and some of the videos, I've got an 86 F-150, so I didn't want to kill that truck. So they came out there, gave it a little shake, and I was pretty much like Cheech and Chong, just throwing sparks out of the back on the way home, where it was just dragging. But yeah, it was not happy, but that truck took it like a champ, and it got me home, and I got more brown dirt.
Well, that's good. And like I said, I know that's a problem in a lot of places. I hear folks that are trying to find good quality materials to work with, and that's so important, to be able to do that because, well, what you're a living example. I mean, that video is great. A great warning to everybody that picking the wrong material or having the wrong material brought to you can lead to some serious delays in realizing your desired outcome. And so, again, just doing your homework on the front end. That's it. Hey, it was a tough lesson, but I don't think that's not a huge fail other than the judgment piece, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not judging you. I've watched so many people
I'm not
do it
judging
over
you
the
either.
years. I let it just ooze out of my ears.
I found a shot of the truck. Here's the truck.
There it is. Look at that bad boy
Oh, yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Is that after the dirt had been removed?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. It
got
took it like
historical
a
plates
champ.
for that this year?
I could. It's an 86. I could definitely do it.
That's 25
Yeah,
years. That's it. Ohio historical
Yep.
plates. Here it comes.
Yep. Yeah.
He's gonna be cruising.
It's not much to look at, but it's just an old cool truck. No real AC, so my AC is opening up the cozy windows on it and letting that breeze in. But yeah, it's cool. My dad actually gave it to me. So how much time we got? So it was kind of a cool little story. My dad had an old H2 Hummer, tons of electrical problems. My uncle and I finally told him, like, you need to ditch that thing before it just freaking catches fire worse than Matt's shed. So finally got him traded off, and he ended up getting just a Dodge truck or something. So he had two trucks. Had no need for two trucks. So he, I guess, kind of staged this whole thing out with my wife, and we needed a truck. I didn't have anything, and I feel that every homeowner should have one. And so I guess he kind of worked this whole thing out with her that, hey, I'm going to give him this truck. Do you think he'll fix it up and do all this stuff with her? Or you think he'll just let it, rot to the side on the side of the house? Well, I'm sure he'll work on it. So he came out one weekend and brought the truck out there. I was going to help him put a bull bar on the front of his new one. And so they showed up. Both trucks are sitting there. And after we're done, I went to the bathroom, washed my hands, come back out, and he has a Chilton's manual sitting there. It's like, hey, look through there, see if you can figure anything out on this factory or the aftermarket AC. It has aftermarket AC, and nobody wanted to touch because they had no idea what the hell they're looking at. So I opened up Chilton's manual, and inside was the title and the keys. So he's like, cheers if you want
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is. That's your old man looking out for you, and hopefully someday you'll be passing it on, right?
Yep. I
Heck
fully
yeah.
intend, now that the this whole kitchen fiasco is done renovating, that I'll get started on that.
Maybe rent a dump truck for future dirt deliveries.
Yeah.
A dump truck for what kind of deliveries?
Dirt.
Oh,
Brown dirt,
oh,
specifically.
I thought you said beer.
Unless you
I
wanna
was
drive
like,
down
boy,
to-
you were getting
I
after
thought he
it.
said beer too. So
Yeah.
No, I said dirt,
Yeah.
dirt, dirt.
I heard beer.
I think that was a
I'm not-
Freudian
I
slip,
mean,
Ryan. I think
I'm-
you've
that
got
was
beer
not-
on the
no.
brain.
Somebody clip that out. Somebody clip that out.
I'm
Somebody
perfectly
clip
fine
that
with a
If I
dump
said
truck of
beer,
beer.
then
I'm
no,
just
I-
saying.
Yeah.
Dump
That's the
truck.
I'm
Cold
sure you
beer,
would
by the
be.
I'll just
all
sit
right,
underneath
hey,
the gate
so-
as it opens up. I'll just be,
Dan the man, what if you could get anything out of this year, out of this season, what is your major goals that you're going after?
I still want to get the pH dropped down a little bit more. That's kind of just my end game. I'd like to get it down to 6.5, so I know that's not going to happen in this year or next year or probably the year after that or the year after that. But I would like to get it down there just to see if I can.
As a reminder, he's at 7 right now.
And I think backyard's still
Doing work.
7.2.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Ben the Lawn Guardian moved his half a point in an entire year, and he's actually got a video coming out about that soon. And it was a pretty strong example of kind of everything coming together correctly, right? So being insanely intensive about your spray cycle regimen, taking a little bit of risk with the elemental sulfur and all of that coming together. So it's doable, but it's also high risk, high reward, right? And it's kind of up to you of how much do you want to chase the dragon and put it all at risk again, because if you kill it, that's you've got to start all over.
I'll have to nuke the whole backyard again. Don't tell my wife.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I was going with that. You may be sleeping with those throw pillows and a towel as a blanket.
Yeah, the throw pillows. Better be the lacy ones though.
Well, what questions do you have for us? And eventually this is going to be segmented out, and I'm just kind of working off the sheet right now because I didn't put any of it together. But
our producer is fantastic, by the way.
He is. J Pink gets it done for us. Stump the Pro is what he titled this, and I will. And he commented here, have a hard hitting question for the panel. Hit him. So let's hear it, Daniel. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but throw it at us.
Damn.
And I'll tell you right now, if your question is how to lower soil phosphorus, I'm not going to recommend you buy something to do that. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way.
I've got one. So I had a comment on my channel about citric acid, and I was told how citric acid was highly antimicrobial and that I should be using phosphorus acid instead. And with that, I will not only be able to lower my pH, but also be able to add phosphorus to my lawn.
Have you ever handled phosphoric acid?
I have not.
Phosphoric acid is extremely corrosive, and it will dissolve lesser metals. I think in terms of, okay, let's see. When a root is, when we talk about root exudates, citric acid is emitted via the root and as part of that symbiotic give and take relationship between the soil and the plant root, right? So that it tells you there that it is actually giving up citric acid for the microbes in return for the rest of the process to go down there. Phosphoric acid, if you sprayed, I mean, you would have to, I think you could do it with phosphoric acid, but you would have to do extremely diluted rates. I think it would be similar to Ray's concoction for spraying sulfuric acid on turf, because it is a strong acid, and boy, don't get it on your skin or any of that stuff, because that is not a fun thing to handle. Also, any kind of microbial degradation that occurs is going to be so minute and so temporary that within a blink of an eye, it would all be back to normal, and you would never have any idea what actually happened.
There was another one too. It was nitric acid that was extremely high in fumes.
Lord have mercy.
It could.
Yeah,
I did some reading
Nitric
when I
acid.
replied back to. Yeah, I did a little bit of reading when I started to respond back to this guy, and it's like, well, there's 3 different ones, and so citric acid is kind of the safer of them. It's maybe a little bit more costlier, but it's a hell of a lot safer.
Again, what's your application interval for the citric acid?
Just a pound per 1,000 per month.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not going to kill my lawn with 1 pound per 1,000. I mean, I believe, Matt, you said it the other day. Dump it straight into the spreader, set it to 30, and go walking across the lawn with it. You might do something to the lawn, but I don't think 1 pound per 1,000 being diluted is going to do jack schmidt.
And people are asking, why not hydrochloric acid? Why citric acid? And Ray, I'll let you talk about that. Why citric acid versus hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid or phosphoric acid? Really, this is kind of your wheelhouse.
Okay, hydrochloric acid will immediately put in a high amount of chloride ions into the soil, which will actually become extremely toxic to the grass. So that's not the best idea. And when we talk about like nitric acid, do you folks understand what concentrated nitric acid does when it's in contact with organic matter? And when I say organic matter, that even includes gloves. Like, say you are being safe and you put on nitrile gloves before you handle that nitric acid. What will happen is if you get any nitric acid on those gloves, the nitric acid will then proceed to oxidize the gloves and oxidize it so fast that the gloves will actually catch on fire with your hand in them. So nitric acid just makes me afraid. And
But
then
what about the soil
you
biology?
want to talk about
Ray?
soil biology, no problems, because by the time the nitric
It's all
acid
dead.
is diluted down in a form that will not make your grass catch on fire, it's not going to hurt the microbes. And in fact, most inputs, even the citric acid, have negligible effect on soil microbes. Negligible. But as far as the acids in their concentrated form, it is like the safest acid to be dealing with, because let's see, Matt just said phosphoric acid will dissolve metals. True. Sulfuric acid, that is another funhouse in and of itself, because sulfuric acid is very well known for getting very exothermic when it is in contact with water. For example, I've seen for myself plastic bottles or plastic buckets soften and sag when someone is pouring in sulfuric acid into the water too fast, because that water literally goes above 212 degrees right then and there. So in most cases, I like citric acid because citric acid is allowed for use, for example, in candies. You can apply citric acid to apples to keep them from browning. That sounds a lot better to me than something that can, instantly get hot or else start a fire. Citric acid starts to sound like a good alternative.
Yeah.
I think the
So what
moral
you're
of the
saying
story
is
here is go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead.
so the equivalent. So getting sulfuric acid on your hands is like equivalent of a 12-year-old run into his grandfather's Viagra stash.
Yeah, pretty much. Nitric acid, forget it. I mean, nitric acid is just scary to me because I've actually seen nitric acid set something on fire.
There's lots of videos on YouTube where you can see someone dip a glove, like a nitrile glove, in a solution of nitric acid, and it does. I mean, it catches on fire. So
Didn't they do that in Roger
imagine,
Rabbit?
Do what?
That's right.
Didn't they do that in Roger Rabbit? Dip the
Roger-
shoe into it.
I don't know, but I mean, it's
Put the whole cartoon.
There's nothing. Again, you kind of got to pick your poison and stick with it. And in terms of wide availability, wide safety, ease of use, ease of handling, citric acid is just one of those that kind of checks off all those tick marks where you're not having to handle a strong acid that is going to be detrimental to the effect of the turf grass.
I think you need to tell your commenter to go back to college and don't drop acid. Take a pass fail.
It's funny too because I was trying to read it over like maybe I'm misconstruing something he's saying because like he had this whole name like Pete Moss, but it was like Peet. I'm like, maybe this guy
Ooh, clever.
might be into lawn care a little bit, but then I started reading. I'm like, no, dude, come on. And he told me I need to put a bunch of worms on my lawn too to naturally aerate the lawn. Like, dude, if you seen what worms do with all the castings all over the lawns and all that nasty crap on there, hard pass.
All right, so before we get wrapped up here, I was going to take a couple of questions from the viewers right now. Telly had a good one. He said, what about humic acid, fulvic acid? Hell, what about deoxyribonucleic acid? I thought that was funny. I'm not going to answer that question, by the way, because I know you know that. But Daniel Bartholomew said, how long is citric acid effective in the lawn, and does it wash away with rain and irrigation? Ray, I'll let you tune into that, but short answer is yes.
Yes. What your citric acid is actually doing for you is it is solubilizing your excessive calcium and magnesium carbonates and getting them out of your life. That's what it's actually doing. So I don't consider the effect totally temporary. So it's, because I know there's various angles where, and I understand the agenda is that this all goes back to, in the minds of some, the only acceptable thing to do to soil is to add more and more humic and organic matter and not actually address the problem.
And I'll use it to kind of segue.
I see the agenda.
Moving into I'll segue that into the next question, because the next question was, how much humic acid do you have to put down before you see great results?
I thought it was 40 ounces per 1,000.
Does anybody want to tackle that, or are we just all going to stare at the camera and try and avoid it? You see, here's the thing, Kevin. When I answer this, I get in trouble on the internet. And so a lot of times I try and take these questions and sweep them under the rug. But I'll give you a very generic, optimistic answer. And the question is that nobody really knows. And there are certain situations where it could work positively for you. And then there could be some situations where it's going to be running into a brick wall for you. And figuring out whether you fall into that category or not is case by case, situation by situation, because in some instances where it does work, it doesn't make sense. And then in other areas where it doesn't work, that doesn't make sense either. Ryan, Ray, is there anything in particular more specific than that you want to add?
Not really, because, not really, actually, because the thing is that in most cases, what you do to a soil, it is extremely difficult to, for example, sterilize or kill all microbial life in the soil more than temporarily even. The closest I can think of to actually destroying microbial life in the soil is fumigation with methyl bromide and chlorpicrin, or putting it under steam for 2 hours. Even then, all the microbes come back within 14 days. So forget about what anybody is trying to tell you about, oh, if you apply this fertilizer, you're going to kill all of your microbial life. Please tell them to go back to school, lay off of the microbial life known as the shrooms, and take some microbiology classes. I know I did. That's why, I can say things like this.
Ryan?
About the question on humic acid, I mean, I agree with what you said, that it is truly hit and miss on where it does actually make a difference and where it doesn't. And there is some some good data in ag on where it does make sense and where it doesn't. I think better than turf, right? A very good friend of mine, close colleague, was actually in the business of developing several of these products not long ago, 10, 15 or so years ago, in the ag market and specifically. So I got to see a lot of interesting data that came out of what was working and what wasn't working, and particularly in some of the most productive areas in cropping of the country, right? And so that's where they really honed in there on their research. In turf, a lot of this is based on a study that was done by Dr. Eric Irvin, who was previously at Virginia Tech, now at University of Delaware. Fantastic scientist, very, very smart and bright guy, that's done a world of good outside of just that one study. And that one study looked at, seaweed extract and humic acid separately and together. And there was definitely a symbiotic relationship there relative to root depth, root mass, all that kind of stuff. And everybody really ran with that and kind of continues to use that. And I think it's a fine study. There's nothing wrong with it, at least from my perspective. But I'm not sure. I think that defining what humic substances are and categorizing them as high quality, low quality, medium quality, whatever, simply doesn't exist, right? There's nothing out there other than, a company's word that says that, hey, this is, X percent, but it might test higher or something like that. Like, okay, then show what it tests at, right? That's pretty easy to send a lab report and let us know what that's at. So again, it's not trying to talk any crap against anybody. It's just, again, transparency and trying to figure out the why rather than, hey, just go ahead and put this down because it's cheap. It's a value add. Go ahead and do it. It's worth it, whatever. Like you, Matt, like I'm still a budget conscious guy when it comes down to it. And if there's something that doesn't do exactly what I know it's going to do, I have a very, very hard time of putting it in the program because I want things that I know what the results are and I can predict with a reasonable degree of accuracy, what the path from A to B, right, from where we are to where we need to get is going to look like. And that's my troubles there. So, what's the maximum rate to see an effect? Mess around and find out. That's the best thing I can tell you.
Yeah. So Kevin, I'll tell you from experience, I started using, humic materials back in the early 2010s. And I've seen a lot of different humic products come and go, and some where I used and had success right out of the gate, and it was undeniable success. And then others that I used and it would be real iffy. I'm trying to Apex. Do you remember Apex 10?
Still
Ryan?
out. Yeah, Central.
Yeah. Not quite the same.
Yeah.
It used to be. It used to be the North Dakota mine was like the first one that I used as Apex 10. Came out of that North Dakota area. Or
Gascon, yeah.
Actually, I think that one was from peat bogs in North Dakota. Actually, it was derived from peat.
That's a peat. It's a peat. Yeah, it's a peat-based product there. So yeah, the two different Leonardite deposits, right, are in like the Gascoigne, North Dakota, and then New Mexico, right? Though from what I understand is that the North Dakota stuff is slightly more pure and a little bit easier to work with from a production standpoint. That's what I understand from some of again the colleague I had and some of the folks I met through him that told me about how their production processes worked and things like that.
So
third party hearsay, whatever.
What I can tell you is that to take a lawn from 0 to 80%, humic acid was never the answer. It's NP and K that takes the lawn from 0 to 80%. And if you're really good with NP and K, you could probably go 0 to 90%, right? But anything beyond that, it's it's situational, I guess, is going to be the gentlest way, least I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings when I say it, but there's a certain level of unpredictability there that goes along with it, and so I think that's a nice, kind, non-hater statement about it.
Yeah, on that too is if you want to take it as a slam or whatever, it's just like admit that I'm trying to think. I mean, other than NPK and water, can Ray, can you think of any other product that is ubiquitous that works no matter where you're at and what you do with turf?
Sunlight.
I'm trying to think. Sunlight. Yeah, well, okay. If you're in Alaska in December, that might be hard to come by, J Pink. I'm sorry. I can't help you there. Can
You asked.
we
I
buy some of
answered.
that? Can we have it shipped to our door, for the low price of whatever in Alaska? I don't know.
Have
That's
you
just
heard of
all
grow
I'm saying
lights?
there is that we could do grow lights. We can call SGL, right, over in Denmark and have them come over, and we can talk to them about it. I'm sure that they would love to sell us grow lights for a lawn. In fact, there might be a guy out in Iowa here someday that has a grow light on his lawn just because he needs to have it. Ryan Nor, I'm looking at you. But in any regard, I'm just saying that to make statements like this that, hey, just do it because it works everywhere, I don't know.
It's a non valid insinuation, I guess, would be the easiest way to put it. It would be like saying a triple 20 is the only fertilizer you would ever need, and that's not the case. Humic doesn't slow the release of N. It plays somewhere more in the space of denitrification inhibition and urease inhibition, not technically slowly delivering it. At least as far as all the research I've seen. And now they may refer to that as slowly available in, but in reality there it's playing more in that enhanced efficiency space. I think claiming it as slow release is a bit dangerous.
Dan, help me out here from a homeowner perspective. How does this stuff land with you? And again, I'm not trying to sit here and dig on people or talk crap. It's just more of, I'm interested in the psychology of this, of right. So the three of us have grinded our proverbial phalluses into the ground, learning, doing, making mistakes, all this stuff for years and years and years. So we're a little bit more chiseled and grizzled when it comes to product claims and things like that. But where do these things land as just a guy, the Joe Six-Pack sitting there at home watching YouTube or whatever and thinking about his lawn? Like, where does it hit? And where does it miss?
Well, I guess I won't go into particular companies, but some of the stuff that's being thrown out there, all this is humic acid and, throw all this crap on the lawn, it's got humic and fulvics and whatever. I started looking at just the price of the bottle. So from a homeowner perspective, you're going to look at the price of it. It's going to be your probably one of the first things you look at, because you don't want to get yelled at for throwing $300 of liquids on the lawn. So I started looking at it. It's like, okay, 100 something dollars for a bottle of this humic acid. Well, at that point I start looking at, okay, is there cheaper alternatives, and is it going to actually do anything? So I'm more willing to throw $20 at the same type of product than I am 120. So then I start, mixing up. So, okay, I can get some, one of the brands was like Terravita SP90 is some soluble humic acid powder that you can get on Amazon. So I bought some of that, $20. Okay. No big deal. Mix some of that up, start throwing it down. It's like, okay, I guess it's doing something, helping the lawn out a little bit. So then I start comparing and start thinking, from that perspective, okay, I just spent $20 to make all this. Why in the heck am I going to spend 120? That just seems like it's probably already just this same powder, and they add water and ship it. So I'm paying, a huge markup, and whatever to send all the stuff out and shipping or whatever. So I started looking at some of that and just kind of figuring, is it really worth my money, and will it actually work? And some of the stuff I'm seeing out there, and one of the other, I just threw out another video, not to throw my own channel out there, but I did a slight review on the liquid lawn aeration. Petra Tools sent me a little 4-ounce bottle of this crap, and
Don't spoil the review, dude.
I'll call it what it is. I mean, I'm not scared. What am I going to do? Not get monetized and not get my affiliate links? I mean, I don't really care too much about that. So it was it's a little 4-ounce bottle of stuff, and it's sodium lauryl sulfate, which a lot of us know is a surfactant typically found in soap. So 48%, we'll call it soap, and 52% water and a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And this crap is like $15 on Amazon. What the hell? So I can go buy a dollar bottle of baby shampoo and go squirt that on the lawn and probably have just as good of effects. And is it really going to aerate my lawn? No. I mean, Matt, you've already hashed that out numerous times with the videos you've got, with the liquid aeration, everything, what it actually does. So I didn't really go too much detail of that, but I'm seeing a lot of this stuff out there that's aimed toward homeowners, and it's making me a lot more skeptical about these products that are being pushed toward them, because it's a lot more of, again, the acronym BMS. So I'm becoming a lot more weary of it, and hopefully a lot of the other DIY people are as well.
Yeah, and I think it's okay. Like, I think people take skepticism as rude or untrusting or anything, but I mean, think about how we buy, a used car or a new appliance or anything like that, right? We don't go into the store and be like, "Hey, sell me your favorite thing," because you think it's your favorite, stove or range for me to buy, right? Like, you do your research, you know what you want, you try to figure it out. Maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's the wrong thing, and these purchases aren't that long term, right? But I don't know. I think people are very sensitive these days to just being skeptical and things like that, and taking things that pros like us do every day and look at products and say, no, or hey, I'll try that, or absolutely yes, I'm all in, right? And we're used to doing that day in and day out because we're getting hit up from all sides, and now it just seems like it's filtered down and whatever. I think the homeowners and DIY folks are being put into the bucket that, again, I'm not sure if they're looking at those folks as ignorant or dumb or something like that, and hey, we can market to them, very easily or whatever. But in any regard, I'm always interested in the psychology from somebody who doesn't do this, every day, day in and day out for a living, and gets hit up by multiple people. So thank you for that. I really appreciate the insight and the feedback.
Yeah, and I
Oh, he froze.
His wife cut
Oh
him off.
I'll so I
there we
was
go.
over here looking at some at one of the research. So Steve Darcy said it may bind to urea, complex it, and it will form a longer chain for the microbes to digest. And not seeing that in the data. However, urease activity was suppressed by the addition of humic acid, and specifically for real. So over the control, it was statistically significant, but your nitrogen use efficiency was only about 3 or 4% different. But if you used peat derived humic substances, and so this would include, this is not going to be an off-the-shelf humic acid that you would use. This would contain all the insoluble matter that goes along with it too. So when you do a humic extracted of linardite or whatever or peat or whatever your organic matter sources, remember in effect, humic is a saponified organic matter. That if you the real significant improvement over nitrogen use efficiency, and when I say significant, I'm saying like upwards of 10% or more, it's looking like 9, 10, 3, 3. So lower rates, and then as you go up to higher rates, it tends to get a little better, closer to that 10 to 9% increase in nitrogen use efficiency. So, how I'm, going off the cuff here, and that sounds probably not quite as strong as our conventional urease inhibitors. I know you said you had some problems with Uflex too, and again, Uflex has been shown that not in every situation to also be effective. They've done farm flyovers to rate quality indexes in the flyover, and where they would expect to see higher values out of crops, they haven't seen it. And so, and Ryan, I think you can talk a little bit about that, about how denitrification inhibitors are not always the go-to. And this is why when I say, slow release and enhanced efficiency are not the same thing, and I don't think it's credible or even right to combine those two as one and the same. They're not. They're incredibly different.
No, they are, and so for our audience, there's two different technologies that are sold out there in the marketplace. So the first is a urease inhibitor, right? Urease is the enzyme that breaks down urea, forms it into ammonium, and makes it plant available, right? So by adding this component to a fertilizer blend, we can actually slow that process down and, to an extent, control the release of that fertilizer. So two popular products that really started that market were Umax and Uflex, and so they were sprayed with varying rates of these urease inhibitors, right? And so Uflex was like a 4 to 6 week product, and Umax was 8 to 12 weeks, something like that. So then, other products that have come out are nitrification inhibitors, and so these came from the ag market, where when we're when we're applying urea to open ground that's especially non-irrigated, we can spray this product onto urea and stop the volatilization that would occur if that product's not irrigated in within, say, 12 to 24 hours, right? And so those are two very, very different technologies, but they get sold, like what Matt's saying, kind of across the board is the same, and that's not exactly true. And so that's one thing to consider too, is when you're doing, apps, particularly of urea, is to consider how you're going to put that down. And so irrigating in or applying ahead of imminent rain are always your best bets with that product. If you're applying foliarly, so if you're going to spray that over the top, your peak uptake into the plant is somewhere between like 4 and 5 hours. You have roughly 80% or so of that N is in the plant, and the rest is going to get washed off of the leaf and go down in the soil and hopefully get picked up by the roots. And so, again, just trying to understand that part of it. There was a lot of good work done, Matt, at University of Illinois. Bruce Branham actually did this probably back 8, 10, 12 years ago, something like that, about those urease inhibitors and the denitrification inhibitors, and basically that, particularly with the denitrification inhibitors, as long as you got that product watered in within, say, 12 to 24 hours, your losses in most cases, I can't remember what the critical temperature was, maybe 85, 86, something like that, were low, so low that it was insignificant, right, to your application. It was above those temperatures, and longer durations of time is what affected your end rate as that stuff gassed off, right? So again, just understanding the best practices around, one, choosing the right fertilizer and understanding the technology that's in it, for one. For two, making sure that you're putting down the right rate at the right time, and then understanding the follow-up care that you need to do to either water that product in, or if you can, let it lay for a longer duration of time before you have rainfall or irrigation coming over top of it. So again, it's stuff like that that makes you feel good because, oh, hey, it's slow release, it's this, it's that. Well, understand the technology of what you're using, understand your end sources, and what that plant's response time should be once you put it down. Right, that's the most important thing. Ray, anything to add?
I think you basically covered it, Ryan. It's because I actually use quite a bit of Umax actually, and the way I use it is not my primary nitrogen source. It is more like what I do to make sure that my application doesn't fall off at exactly the 3 to 4 week mark. You know, I use it so that I know I'm spraying every month, but by adding Umax as up to say 25% of the nitrogen actually being applied, I get it such that the grass growth is always even. It's not a case of surge growth followed by the grass really falling off when it's time, to get more nitrogen, for example.
Yeah, no question. And that's the yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say even though these are touted as newer technologies, if you kind of go back on the chemistry, N-butyl thiophosphoric acid, yeah, that's a little bit on the newer side. Before that was used as a urease inhibitor, but the dicyanamide, prior to that, there was calcium cyanamide, right? And that was kind of like the OG slow release urease inhibitor, and kind of a cure-all too, right? So it offered insect control. It fed the plant. It had a carbon component to it. It was all these things that was cool and wonderful, and solved a lot of problems, right? And that was kind of the OG, and then that morphed into dicyanamide, which just turned out to be so much cheaper. And when we're talking about cost-based returns, the cost per acre to use something like a humic-based substance versus the cost per acre of a urease inhibitor or a denitrification inhibitor, it's still significantly cheaper to use one of those urease or denitrification inhibitors than it is to use a humic substance at this point.
One thing I want to get both of your takes on is there's a product. Camera died. Don't worry about that. A product that's out from a major manufacturer that has done pretty well, but the humic coated urea. And again, that's a technology that is older, right? If you look back at the data and the research going back into corn and some other crops back in the late 80s or so, that saw some benefit to it. But again, it was a cost to benefit thing way back then, and only since has been put back into the turf market. So just curious on your takes on that, gentlemen.
I guess it comes down to the statistical significance of how that would compare to, again, because if you look at the release curves, and I don't believe they've done any studies on nitrogen use efficiency specifically out of that product, at least that I haven't seen. But at least what I have seen out of it mimics pretty much every other urease or denitrification inhibitor that's out there. So it's an alternative. I don't necessarily see it as a replacement for, because as far as the impact it had, it wasn't a big enough gap to justify the cost to go that direction, right?
Right. Well, I haven't seen anything out of using that product that you described such that it'll make me change what I do. Because for one thing, when you have that quote unquote humic on the urea, you still have the issue of that no longer being tank mixable with materials like micronutrients, or being tank mixable with phosphorus if you needed it. So that company has not solved that problem, because if you're going to talk about applying humic coated onto urea prills, then you're talking to me about applying that urea as a standalone application, assuming that your NPK, etc., is all in order otherwise, and you have no need for chelated or immediately available micronutrients. So at that point, I am thinking that this becomes another product that is just taking advantage of a buzzword, and I despise buzzwords being used by various industries and commercial sectors. I kind of walk away from that. Not my thing.
Ryan, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Ryan. Unmute yourself. Hit the button.
What is this?
I was gonna
First
say
stream?
it's. Yeah, I mean it's my first stream where I'm gonna say synonyms for penis or something like that and get caught. So, yep, you can say that. It's a part of the human anatomy. Come on, we've all seen them. So, yeah, I don't know. I was just curious on how much you all had played with that and done anything with. And again, I understand the premise of it, and there is some good data to suggest that there's some benefit. And again, that was on corn, and that was 30-plus-year-old data. But yeah, it's always interesting when something old becomes new again, right? And you always have to question the motives of, well, why, right? And there's definitely been a lot of that stuff in turf over, I mean, geez, really over the last 100 years even. Like if you go back and look at USGA, the United States Golf Association green records that were put out, starting back in the 20s, and kind of see that snake oils have existed for a long time. Not to say that any of the stuff that we've talked about this evening is snake oil, but again, that the idea of making something new and putting buzzwords like Ray, what you said behind stuff, it's not negative. And the reason that we're skeptical is because it's been cyclical and it's happened over and over and over again. And what stood the test of time, right? We talked about, Ray, you said it, that NPK is for you. And I think I've said it before, maybe not in these quarters, but in other places, that, you date all the fun stuff like biostimulants and all that other good stuff, but you marry NP and K. That's who you go home to at night, take care of, sleep on the couch with the little pillows.
Real quick, before we
Or
close
actually,
this
the
out,
NPK is such that you don't need to sleep on the couch. How's that?
Because it loves you back unconditionally and doesn't
Right.
judge you if you get brown, black, red, or gray dirt. It doesn't care. Doesn't care.
So I was sent Gravy Lookout sent me an article, and this is from the Journal of Applied Ecology, and this is directly from the headline: Roundup causes high levels of mortality following contact exposure in bumblebees. Now, what's interesting, as you go down and look at what they used Roundup Ready to Use as well as Roundup Proactive. And what both of these contain are in-can surfactants. And why this is so misleading and appealing towards towards the fear in everybody is soap and water will kill a bee, will kill a wasp. And so basically the use of any surfactant is in effect a soap of sorts, and thus can cause death to an insect. And that is likely why what it says down here: surfactants and other co-formulants and herbicides and other pesticides may contribute to global bee declines. We recommend that as a precautionary measure until co-formulant identities are made public. Label guidelines for all pesticides be altered to explicitly prohibit application to plants when bees are likely foraging to them. And okay, I get it. Totally get it. This is not going to be an anti-bee thing. But again, reading the headline here is that Roundup causes high levels of mortality following contact exposure in bumblebees, when in reality, it is the in-can surfactant portion of Roundup that is causing it. And it's not just in Roundup. It is in herbicides from major manufacturers, from Syngenta, from Bayer, from New Farm, Prime Source, Control Solutions. You pick your poison. All of these are going to contain a surfactant or emulsifier of some sort that has this potential. So to unfairly point at Roundup as being the major player here contributing to the decline of bee death is, one, it's not accurate, and two, it's not a fair statement. This is an attempt to scare people into submission, and I think that is such horseshit that everything that is fed to us at this point is with the intent of scaring us. I am fully convinced of that. There's very rarely can I turn on the news or can I open the newspaper and there's not some sort of article with the pure intent of that article based on the content contained in that article. It is only to scare me. And I'm over it and I'm done with it. And I wish there was something that could be done with it, done about it, but unfortunately there isn't. And so, you take it as for what it's worth. But I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to cave to it because I spent enough of my life being scared, and I'm over it. And just like this is being fed to me on a damn in a spoon, no, thank you. This is garbage. This is trash. Anyway, I'll save my real comments for the show after the show, Gravy. How about that?
I do want to touch on something real quick related to that. Is that, again, do you smell that? Do you smell it? It's
No.
controversy. It's controversy. There was some controversy this week, and I just want to address it by saying that there are a lot of people that have worked really, really hard to do the right thing and do it repeatedly and do it when no one's watching. And I think that is where some of the criticism lies with some of the stuff that we talk about here, we talk about after. And again, it's because we have done it, and so many of the people that are in the same shoes that we are have done it, right? And so I want you to throw this up, J Pink, if you can, the link I just sent you. But people are like, well, there's no malice or there's no ill intent or anything like that to show what somebody's doing and sell a product and things like that. And I'm not here to talk about commercial interest. I don't care if you sell, life insurance on YouTube. I really don't. I don't care. But what I do care about is when you take the ownership of providing content that's going to show people how to use something, that you do it safely and you do it properly. And so people say, well, there's no way that, somebody misting a sulfonyl urea product into the air through a hose end sprayer is going to cause any grief, right? Well, so again, this is all about public perception. This is all about how we are perceived as an industry. And that goes all the way down to the people at the homeowner and DIY level that apply, right? And so there are literally exhibits, that are made every day of this poor choices, poor behavior, whatever the case might be. And whether it's willingly or ignorantly, it's all wrong. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I didn't know if the speed limit was 65 or I didn't care if the speed limit was 65, I was still speeding. And that's the same case here. And so a case I want to talk about here, Montgomery County, Maryland. And I'm not, guys, we don't have to get too deep into this, but I just want to highlight this for a second. J-Pink, if you could, this is the FAQ for them. Scroll down to the third one. How can I easily tell if a pesticide is not allowed on a lawn, playground, or other specified area? If the product has an EPA registration number, it is generally not allowed. That's literally everything that you see on YouTube. That's literally everything that you see on YouTube not allowed. And why is that? Because of public reception, because of what Matt talked about. And it doesn't matter what you want to do, say, or apologize for. It is the kind of stuff that we see that is wrong, that we're not afraid to call out because it's wrong, that is going to ultimately affect this, right? This is not me on a soapbox. This is me being real, because if you think this is the only place that this is happening, go visit Maine. Go visit other places on the East Coast, Connecticut, Massachusetts, right? Go visit places on the West Coast and even in Middle America, right? Okay? There was a bill that was introduced in the Illinois state legislature to ban the sale of glyphosate everywhere in the state of Illinois, right? And so, again, not here to debate all that kind of stuff. and get into those political or policy or regulatory issues. It is more about what is being put out in the content and the responsibility that folks have, regardless of what your experience level is. It's your job to live up to the standards, not for other people to be like, well, you should have followed the label, because even though I, made a video about it, showed you how to use it and sold it to you, I absolve myself of all responsibility. That's horseshit. That's horseshit. So that's a great way to end the show. Daniel, do you have any closing thoughts for us? I really enjoyed having you on. I'm sorry it was late, but I had to read that book again on just being positive, on really being positive.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, I think what you were just going on there, kind of nailed it. It doesn't matter if you're a DIY guy or a professional or whatever. I mean, read the labels and apply the stuff correctly. I definitely try to do my best, on camera or off, to not do anything stupid. And I'm sure if I did that, Ray would probably yell at me for it. So
You have some good turf parents that are here to guide you,
yes, and I am extremely grateful for that. Being able to, rely on you guys at any given moment to, even bounce off any simple questions, even as something very simple, to run stuff by you to make sure that I am doing stuff right. I try to read, and but sometimes if I still have questions, I at least have some, like you said, turf parents to lean on.
We appreciate you, son.
Yeah, I can have $20.
Yeah, we're gonna pass you down someday. We're gonna pass you down the turf F-150 that's had nitric acid, phosphoric acid in the back. The bed's melted out, and the radio doesn't work right. But by God, you're still gonna have 260 air conditioning. You roll those two windows down, go 60 miles an hour. It'll be cool enough. It'll be fun.
Yep.
Everyone, in the show description down below, go click the link and subscribe to the Lawn Stripes, and watch his review of a liquid aeration product, so that way I get some of the heat diverted from me. Right, pass that all on to Daniel, and then I'll jump in the comments and be a big strong boy there, where I can hide behind the keyboard because I don't have enough of a public presence to be able to handle myself. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. DeMay, for tuning in. And by the way, I didn't get to go into the details, his stats on the beginning of the show here, but we were talking about why the panel is put together the way it is. Ryan not only started as a golf course superintendent, but manages one of the absolute busiest baseball parks in all of America. And when I say busiest, they have maybe the highest or close to the highest number of games per year in any municipal district across America. And it's not just one field he maintains. We're talking an entire region of fields that he maintains, not just directly as a professional manager, but also indirectly as a solidified consultant in the industry. You don't have to dig too deep in the industry to find out what Ryan DeMay does for a living. There's no secrets here, and so that is why we assembled the team of Ray and Ryan. And I just get to get on here and be the keyboard warrior and the mic eater himself. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Ryan, don't say a damn word. I will strike you. And by the way, the show after the show for the members only is coming up next. And remember, if you want to stick around for that, that's not going to be for everybody. That's not going to be for the faint of heart. And if you're not into those types of things, stay away. It's perfectly okay. You do not have to watch. If you don't want to hear bad words, you don't like bad words. If you don't like bad attitudes, or you get offended easily, I'm telling you right now, it's not for you. And that is 100% okay. We do not fault you for it. In the meantime, we will, by the way, the link will be up for 10 minutes and 10 minutes alone in #DirtyDeeds. And of course, the members will know that when they join. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the flip side.